Hi, I'm Alex and welcome to the Datalex channel. Today I will do the breakdown of the AI praise app that I've built that completely transformed the way I provide feedback to my colleagues. The AI praise app is an AI-powered feedback generator that improves your feedback game. And I will do this breakdown into three parts. Quality boost, which is also known as Rate My Feedback feature, Fresh Ideas Generator feature, and then we'll end with the tech and technicalities of the app. Let's get into it. Let's look at the quality boost first. So the quality boost essentially rates your feedback. This feedback needs to be per job role that you're writing the feedback for. So the reason for that is that the type of skill to be highlighted for a data scientist, for example, should be very different than from a product manager or a people manager. So that's really the first thing you need to choose in this app. Then the other big thing about this app and really the interesting part of this feature is how is this evaluation is done. So let's get a little bit into that. So in a situation like this, there's no ground truth to evaluate the text on. And what do I mean by that? So imagine that instead of this, you'll be evaluating whether some mathematic calculation is right or wrong. So imagine you have to evaluate whether 2 plus 2 is 4. So in that case, you could just see if the result is 4, then it's correct. If it's not 4, then you know very easily that that's incorrect. So how do you go about evaluating a text like this where there's no ground truth equivalent to that math operation? So this uses an evaluation based on a rubric. So the rubric is like a set of guidelines or dimensions that the LLM, the large language model, evaluates that text feedback on. It's almost like having a checklist of criterias that you kind of do a checkbox once you read through them and look at the text. One of them could be, is the feedback without, or this text without spelling mistakes, yes or no? Another one could be, is the feedback highlighting the appropriate skills for that job role that I mentioned earlier, yes or no, and so forth. So the way it works in this app is that I will give the LLM this feedback text I'm writing alongside with the rubric instructions. I set the LLM to a temperature of 0 to reduce what is called the hallucinations, because I don't need AI to be creative here. In fact, it's the opposite. I want it to be as accurate as possible in following these instructions that I'm giving it to do the evaluation on. And then at the end of all of those different clauses for evaluation, I just say, hey, count the number of guidelines that it successfully meets. And if that's above 70%, then say it's a success. And the 70% is just a random guideline. It could be above 50, could be above 90, etc. And then we can see actually the final answer to whether the feedback is good or not. So let's look at an example of that. So here, this is the example I have put. I define it as a feedback for a data scientist. And then we can see how it is evaluated by the LLM. And in here are the different criteria of that rubric. For example, is the submitted feedback well-structured and professional? It says, in this case, yes. Clear, concise, easy to understand, etc. and so forth. It goes through a collection of rubrics. This is even valuable to kind of check the feedback he gives us in a way, as a way of improving what we wrote already, because it actually tells you why is that criteria being met and not. And then at the end, as I mentioned, it goes and calculates out of all of those criteria how many of them are met and whether it tells you whether it's is successful or not. So I conclude that the feedback is considered to be addressing the request. So this would be a successful one. So what would be the case of where the evaluator tells you that it's not correct? So let's look at an example I've done earlier of a feedback that for a feedback which is not appropriate. So this feedback is essentially good stuff, dude. And then the evaluator comes back and said for each of those criteria whether they are met or not, and ends up saying that, hey, it's not really well structured nor professional. It does not provide any type of examples for the praise. And it does contain spelling and grammatical errors. So anyway, this is only addresses 17% of the questions asked. So this is an example where it's actually working and it's telling you what is right or not. It is a bit of an extreme example, but nevertheless, just to exemplify of what it does. The Fresh Ideas Generator has the goal of creating new ideas for the feedback that I'm working on, new wording, new sentences that I could leverage, and then I can integrate. So the main thing on this feature is figuring out how does the model know what to generate? Like what kind of tone and approach to use to generate this feedback by itself. So what I've done is a technique called the few-shot prompting. And when I ask to generate feedback from the model, I include a few examples of what I'm expecting to see, kind of saying like, this is how it should look like. And in fact, I've used here examples of feedback that I've given in the past or that I've received. The other interesting point is that the set of feedback I give as the examples, they are actually different per each role that I have here on the app, because the feedback to a data scientist should be different than an engineer, to a people manager, etc. In this case, I set the LLM temperature to 0.6 because I do want it to be creative. I wanted to have new ideas. And so we can look at the examples I've just generated for a product manager. So this is different than the previous example. This is for a product manager. And let's see at the feedback that it gave. Colleague excels at building strong relationship with stakeholders across the organization. Ability to communicate technical details in a clear manner. Working closely with engineering, nice. The requirements are well defined and feasible. Delivery of high quality features. Instrumental in driving successful project outcomes. Communicate technical requirements and guidance on product priorities. Wow, so this is all relationships with cross-functional teams. This is very appropriate to a product manager. Passion for understanding customer needs and market trends. Successful product launches. So, etc. and so forth. You get the idea. So when I'm working on a feedback, I can come here to this idea generator and I can leverage a sentence here or there or some idea that I haven't thought about that I like it. And once I have that, I can go back up to the quality boost. I put here the rewritten feedback and I run again the quality boost to have it rate my feedback, see if it gets better. Now the tech and technicalities. All of this app is built using the Python programming language. The application itself the front end of the application is a web framework called Streamlit, which I have some experience on. The large language model I'm using here is llama 3. So I've tried a few different open source options, Mistral, Microsoft Phi 3, and a collection of others. But I have the best results with llama 3 for this particular application. Both the Mistral and the Phi 3 would actually work for this application. Those were like what I would call successful ones. There was many others I haven't mentioned the name, but it didn't really work for this application. So I would say choose your models carefully. They can perform considerably different and they can even be fine-tuned for different applications. So that is somewhat expected. Phi 3 was impressive because I had a lot less expectation from it. It's a lot smaller. It's a small language model and takes less space. And so, but it actually would work even for this application. This llama 3 model is a fairly recent one, is the 7 billion parameter model. So there are even the 71 would be even performing better, I would imagine. But even the 7B is good or good enough for this application. I've ran all these tests on open source models in an app called LM Studio in my own machine. It's kind of slow, granted, but it does work for this application. It's fine. And the advantage is with the LM Studio, you can quickly try out different open source models with your app that you are building. Thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Bye-bye.